It's time for 41 is the Mic, a weekly Chiefs podcast with Nick Jacobs of KSHB 41 and Matt Derrick of Chiefs Digest. 41 is the Mic starts now.
Yes, everyone, you're back with another episode of 41 is the Mic. I am Matt Derrick from Chiefs Digest, alongside docuseries enthusiast Nick Jacobs from KSHB 41. Nick, how are you this bright and glorious Sunday?
I have not seen the docuseries you're talking about, sir, unless it's The Last Dance or any of the 30 for 30s.
Well,
I saw the Joplin tornado though recently on Netflix. That was terrifying.
Well, we might as well just get into it because we want to get through some of the news of the week before, so we can get straight into talking about draft prospects. And yes, really, the biggest news of the week this week, Nick, was that the Chiefs are going to be the subject of a multi-series, 6-episode series of. I guess they're calling it a 30 for 30-ish kind of thing with ESPN, but it is going to be essentially a history of the Chiefs told through the focus and the lens of the 2024 season, produced by much of the same team that was involved in The Last Dance and produced by the NFL, Skydance, Patrick Mahomes' studio, the Chiefs' new Foolish Studios that they're getting off the ground. I mean, this sounds like it could be great, Nick, because I mean, the ESPN is pitching it as, hey, the Last Dance is coming to the NFL and the Kansas City Chiefs.
And I want to emphasize the people outside the realm. When Matt said Foolish Studio, it actually is what they call it's the Foolish Club production.
Yes, I'm sorry, I left out the middle name. Yes,
so Matt was not criticizing them in any way,
no.
shape, or form. That is actually the production of some of the stuff they're attempting to do here in Hollywood or be associated with for new business ventures on a scale that isn't just Kansas City.
All part of making the Kansas City Chiefs the American football team of the globe.
American football team of the globe. I love it.
You can't say football team because then people think you're talking about soccer outside the United States. So, gotta say, it's American football. You sound very excited about this, Nick.
I mean, I'll watch it when it happens, but I mean, I'm not gonna have a countdown clock because I don't know when we're counting down to, and I don't know if you know, but it's draft season anyway. So I mean, draft season. I just want to know if they're gonna have any of 41 is the Mic clips in there. My guess is no, since they haven't reached out to us.
It does make a lot of sense because, I mean, once again, throughout the entire season, there were a lot of people hanging around shooting video that you just didn't know who they were. And after quarterback, I just assume now that anytime I see somebody at One O'Hare Drive that I don't know who's shooting video for some reason, I just assume that they're shooting a documentary series on somebody. So I think I even joked at one point last year that maybe that was Taylor was shooting a documentary or something. So I feel like I was halfway close, Nick. But now a lot of things are starting to make sense, and I guess just going to have to assume that every year the Chiefs are going to have something being shot in secret that we don't know about that just drives us all crazy.
I mean, it didn't bother me in any way, shape, or form because I mean. They stood behind me part of the time, or they stood to the side when they were shooting some stuff, and that's fine. I don't care.
The conspiracy theorist in me believes, though, that this ate up much more time than, and I'm not saying that Kansas City Chiefs lost the Super Bowl because they were shooting this documentary. No, not saying that at all. I'm saying that they stole valuable time from me because it's very possible that, hey, we were consistently told last year, Nick, oh, hey, you know what, Travis, Patrick, all these guys, everybody, Chris, all these guys have, too much demands on their time. So that's why, they can't always do their media and everything. This is why. I blame it on Skydance Studios, Nick.
I feel like you were just looking for somebody to blame, and this was the easiest way you could come up with it.
Well, you know what?
You want to know what you got back with that time that you didn't get to spend asking players whatever you wanted to?
I got more time contemplating not winning the lottery.
Well, I mean, you got to play the lottery first, but you got to spend more time with friends and family.
Well, there you go. If that meant more time with you, Nick, then I was the better for it.
No, we've got a certain allotment of time, so it's pretty standard.
Well, outside of that, I mean, really only a couple of maybe small nuggets last week. Not a big surprise. Mike Pennel is back. Chiefs Najee Johnson signed his tender, so he'll be back. Mike Pennel, not a big surprise. I mean, it was pretty obvious that I think Mike Pennel was either going to come back with the Chiefs or just was going to wait or just not play football anymore since he's 34 years old. But I know Mike still has that fire burning. Obviously, the Chiefs have a role for him, and it fits in with what we're going to talk about a little bit later, Nick, because we're going to talk about the Chiefs need defensive line help and defensive tackle. Mike Pennel's a piece, but still doesn't change the fact Chiefs need defensive line help.
Yeah, no, none of the moves the Chiefs made impact what they need long term. Because long term, you still need help for Chris Jones. Because even though you brought Charles Omenihu back, you brought Mike Pennel back, even though you brought those guys back, you still need additional help for Chris Jones at the defensive tackle spot behind him and beside him, and also at the edge rusher spot, because you're trying to build this pass rush for 26, 27, and 28. So this is the draft to get it done, and this is where you could actually come away with some significant impacts that actually help your pass rush be more like the Eagles and less like the where are they?
And you can't just bring the entire band back from last year and expect better results. I mean, the Chiefs would like to have a defensive line that's closer to 2023. And right now, they don't even have the pieces that they had in 2023. So, when you're missing a Tershawn Wharton and a Derrick Nottie, adding Jerry Tillery is nice, but that's not going to get you to 55 sacks.
No. When even though you had Nottie and Tershawn last year, they didn't get you there either.
Yeah. So let's get into it, Nick. I mean, this is what we're all here for. We're here to talk about the 2025 NFL draft. And I don't think that there's any doubt. I mean, I would be stunned if the Chiefs, one, did not pick a defensive lineman. I would be mildly stunned if the Chiefs in this draft did not acquire 2 defensive linemen. And I think I would only be, I'd still be a little surprised they didn't come up with 3. I mean, that would not surprise me at all if they came out of 3 with this draft. The Chiefs need defensive line help, and like you said, for the future and for now. So, and this is, by most considerations, a deep draft at both defensive tackle and defensive end. It really, even though in defensive end, once again, at the end of the first round, you usually are getting guys who have second round grades, maybe even third round grades. Defensive tackle might be different. I mean, this is a deep group that you might find some really big talent there. And let's start with defensive tackle, Nick. Let's get into your board and what you got and who you like.
All right, Matt, we're going to get this party started. The first one we're going to name, it's a name you're going to hear on a regular basis. Walter Nolan of Ole Miss. Nolan is a relentless tackle. He will battle through doubles, poor angles, and hand fighting like crazy to get into the backfield. He's a penetrating tackle that wants to disrupt every play. He is constantly battling, hand fighting to find a way to get back to the quarterback or ball carrier. Nolan has some sneaky explosiveness when he gets an angle or a gap to attack. He can rock some defenders back with his punch and rattle them back. I haven't seen a guy be able to jolt an offensive lineman back the way he did since Khalil Mack whenever he was coming out of Buffalo in college. So that was pretty impressive on that front. And he's a guy who may slip down to the Chiefs, and if he is, you go take him. Next person on the party is going to be Tyleik Williams from Ohio State. Williams has serious lateral quickness and good acceleration to go with it. He can rush 2 gaps over and loop around at full speed without much wasted movement. Williams is a quick hand fighter and also has a solid bull rush. I liked his punch. He can routinely defeat one-on-one blocks, so that's a grade on that aspect of it. Double teams can push him back to a certain extent, and Williams does play with high energy throughout the entire play. Next one on the party, and then we'll get Matt's thoughts here. Darius Alexander from Toledo. Alexander reminds me a lot of Chris Jones as a pass rusher. He's got high energy, explosiveness, and relentless effort. He has a very powerful bull rush, a great rip move, swim move, and club. Alexander ideally needs to keep his pad level down, so that's going to have to be worked on. But his punch is pretty strong. He's able to rock some of the blockers back, just like I talked about previously with a guy by the name of Walter Nolan. And Alexander, I like his hand fighting ability. So, Matt, thoughts after the first 3?
Yeah, I mean, out of the 3, Alexander stands out simply because was one of the faster defensive tackles at at the combine. I mean, obviously there's a lot of athleticism there, but I think he got it in spades in all of them. And it's intriguing to me because, once again, I think this is illustrative of just how deep that this defensive tackle class is, Nick, is that I think you can go a lot of places and find these guys in a lot of different orders. I mean, there's no consistency that there's one consensus guy ahead of everybody else. There's a lot of good depth in this defensive tackle group. And I mean, all three of those guys, I mean, to me, they're good fits. Whether they'll any of the three, all of the three, none of the three could be available at 31 for the Chiefs will be interesting. But I like them. And like I said, Alexander stands out just because of his quickness. I would be interested to just see how that translates to this level.
So those three guys I mentioned all potentially could go first round, late first round, and early second round. That's kind of where I'm thinking each of those guys is going to go. And Alexander has a pick six for a touchdown that you can find. That is his number one highlight reel thing that people go find and like to showcase on a regular basis. Next guy on the list is going to be Derrick Harmon from Oregon, another guy who may go first round, second round. Harmon has high-end athletic ability for defensive tackle. He can shoot the gap very quickly. He's got great overall size and sneaky acceleration to go with it. Harmon is able to lock out the blocker in single blocks, which is a key quality to have, because then you can read in the backfield whenever you're doing it and be able to toss the defender and then toss the blocker and go make the play. And he can take on a double team. He knows how to engage. He knows how to read the backfield, shed the block like I just talked about, and make the tackle quickly. Harmon has a quick and powerful rip move. He can come in a little hot at time on sack attempts and miss the sack because of it. So he's going to have to come in a little bit slower at times on that front if he wants to do that. Next one on the list, I'm going to go with Alfred Collins from Texas. Collins has a wicked spin move that he shouldn't have for a man of his size, but he does. And it's it gives guards trouble. He's got good acceleration. Collins, again, knows how to lock out defender, read the backfield, and shed. He's got a solid punch or pop to his punch. He looks like he can still put on a little bit of weight and be in great shape to hold the line and maintain his athletic ability. Collins is able to hold his own against double teams. I would see him more as a one tech. The guys I previously mentioned before, I think would likely be backup three techs for him. Next guy on the list is going to be a one tech as well, Deion Walker from Kentucky. Walker is built like Tre'Dell Sands for people that remember him. He's a mountain of a man at a one tech, and he has room to bulk up strength wise. Not necessarily from an overall size wise, but from strength wise. If they can get him in weight room, kind of drop the weight down, but get the strength up, I think that would do wonders for him in the NFL. Linemen struggle to move him because of his size. Like they're going to need double teams to move him. That's just the reality. He doesn't have an overwhelming bull rush like you would want. That's where the strength's going to come in down the road. But he is strong and can move blockers when he's motivated. So that's part potentially conditioning, part just overall strength training. Get those things going. You get the party started. Walker likes to stand up at times and watch the backfield versus, just penetrating and disrupting into the backfield. At times he looks tired and occasionally uninterested and he's just there. And he's got a lot of ability to tap into. It's just a matter of, can they find what potentially motivates him on occasion, or is it something from a conditioning perspective that they've got to take care of? So that'll be that on that front. Matt, more thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, one, I'm intrigued. Anytime you're talking about a one tech and some mountain guys, I mean, I'm definitely interested, because that's been one area that the Chiefs just haven't had a guy to develop and really nurture in that role in a long, long time. And I mean, they've been using veterans to try and plug it. I mean, Mike Pennel, and even they've recently brought back Marlon Tuipulotu, which, I mean, Marlon's a guy you can see from outer space. So they've tried to figure out how to fill this spot. I mean, Walker, and I'll say this, I mean, the notes, the negative notes that you have on him, they don't worry me a ton, because I remember when people used to say the same thing about Chris Jones. That was the knock on him coming out of college, was that he maybe didn't have the work ethic, that he took plays off.
He ran hot and cold. You could see his dominance, but then you can see when he looked disinterested.
But he doesn't have that at this level. I mean, whether it was Chris turning the switch or the coaching staff turning the switch, I think you got to put a lot of it probably on the organization helping him find the switch. And if that's what Walker needs, I mean, if that's what one of these guys needs to take it, that, like I said, that doesn't worry me. I mean, unless the Chiefs look at this guy and say it's a worry. So, I mean, if Chiefs were to take one of these guys, and it's like Walker, if they were to take him, I wouldn't be concerned about those negatives, because that's something I feel like this organization has had a way to figure out how to bring it out in those guys.
I see what you're saying, Matt. And in that prospect, we will continue on as we forge to find the perfect defensive tackle. Next up on the list is going to be Joshua Farmer from Florida State. Farmer would be like a Derek Nottie type one tech in the Chiefs scheme, with a little bit more burst in his pass rush and a lot more attitude in his punch and rush to go with it. Farmer's a bit rigid in his ability to run the games that the Chiefs do. It's not as fluid. His hips are a bit tight for lateral movements. He creates a nice punch at defenders with his arm length and his power. When he sees a path to the rush, he accelerates in a straight line quickly to get to the quarterback. So he would give you a little bit better one tech production than what you potentially had if he were a guy that you got. I think he's an individual right now that's probably going to go in the third round, but we'll see. And when I stack them all up here in the end, I'll end up doing that, and that'll be on that front. Omar Norman Lott from Tennessee. Norman Lott wins based on leverage and speed. He's got good acceleration, phenomenal lateral quickness, and he would be strong in games for the Chiefs. He would overwhelm some people, like the way Alan Bailey could at time to time when they were doing that back in the day. He can get three gaps over quickly, and I shouldn't be able to do that at a man his size, but he does. He's got good pop in his bull rush, and it's based on his pad level. When he keeps his pad level at a certain point, he gets good pop. When he doesn't, it has some struggles at time. And when he's able to fire off, like it's even more noticeable. So whenever they get his weight room strength at a certain point, like he could be a big disruptor at the defensive tackle spot. Right now, I see him as a kind of an interior pass rushing specialist, and they're going to have to work on his strength to get him to hold up against the run. I don't think he's there yet personally. He does have a knack for using his speed to get off blocks and hits them with the club very quickly. So there is that front on that one. How many have we done? Is that 3? I don't remember. Or is it 2?
I think it was just 2, yes.
Okay. All right. We'll do one more, then we'll get more of Matt's thoughts. This guy, I'm going to call him underrated, but he's somebody Matt and I talked to. That's going to be Ty Robinson out of Nebraska. Robinson, high effort defensive lineman. He reminds me so much of Max Crosby in the effort that he gives, the energy level that he has, the high end acceleration that he has. Robinson's got a strong rip move, great forklift move, and he bull rushes to get through. He splits double teams. He runs down the line like a freight train, and you better hope that freight train doesn't hit you because it's going to hurt. When I watched him on tape, he looked like J.J. Watt in terms of size with Max Crosby's hustle. Does not mean he's completely those players, but it means like he's got the traits that kind of remind you of them when you're watching tape of him. And I'm just telling you, when Robinson's running a ball carrier for full speed, that's terrifying. Like you're like, I just hope that everybody's okay after that one. He's capable of locking out on a blocker, reading the quarterback, and then tossing the quarterback or ball carrier to make the tackle. And he's got a punch that can rock some defenders. And also he has the added bonus where he can play fullback if you need to. Matt, the floor is yours.
Well, when you start talking about underrated, I was hoping that Ty Robinson was the guy you were bringing up, because you mentioned, we did talk to him. So if you haven't watched that interview, go check it out. This is a guy I think absolutely would fit with what the Chiefs do. I mean, he's versatile. He can play theoretically every position on the defensive line. You're right. The motor's incredibly there. The athleticism is off the charts. I mean, according to the Kent Lee Platt's RAS score, he had the second highest RAS score in this draft. Not among tackles, not among defensive linemen, the second highest in the draft class, which, I mean, it's adjusted by position, but that just tells you where his athleticism is. It's off the charts. He's fast, he's quick, he's strong, he's got everything. I really like everybody you mentioned in this group because, you know, I'm trying to remember Norman Lott's middle name, but the kid from Tennessee, he intrigues me because whenever you mention Alan Bailey, that gets me going. So I mean, if you could find another Alan Bailey as the Kansas City Chiefs and that kind of player, then yeah, you know, sign me up, because that's, once again, that's exactly a kind of, you know, input that the Chiefs need for now. It seems like that as much as we talk about the top of this draft, Nick, and that there's, you know, some real depth to it, there's a tail, because it seems to me like there's going to be some guys in the third round that might be better and might have better careers than the guys in the first round.
I mean, we'll see on that front, but I mean, like the guys we're talking about now, those are likely going third, fourth round range. So that's what I want people to know. So each time Matt and I, when I give the floor back to Matt, that's changing the round. Just so you know, that's kind of a way of changing the round. So right now, I think we're hitting into kind of late third, fourth round range. And this is another underrated guy that probably isn't getting the respect he deserves. It's CJ West out of Indiana. West is a one tech in my mind. He's a run stuffing tackle with promise as a pass rusher. I think he's got a good setup. He's good at setting up his teammates on stunts in games. Very good at that, to where he'll be the guy that'll go first, let him. He's like the great wingman for him. So like he handles the business so they can go make the play. West makes sure to engage blockers to create that path for his teammate. And I thought he shot the gap really well on a regular basis. And I feel like the way he's able to shoot gaps and the way he's able to do the games of stunts, I felt like really disrupted teams when they were trying to block him and really kind of forced them to kind of alter the way they were doing things in games when I was watching it. And West's lateral quickness to fight through reach blocks and close on the play is just ridiculous. So that is another individual that I'm a fan of. If they had a club for him, I might be a part of that. So this guy's it'll probably go earlier. It's Shamar Turner from Texas A&M, and I know Joe Cullen was down at Texas A&M. Like the report was that Joe Cullen was down at Texas A&M, potentially watching him in the defensive end. But what I'll tell you about Turner has the makings of a solid rotational player. I feel like he can maintain his ground against single blocks. He does struggle against doubles and will get pushback. But he's able to change direction, and it takes a little bit more widening than it does for some other defensive tackles higher on the list. But he gives high effort. He doesn't quit on a play, and he can punch like a freight train when he connects. So that's another key thing that you want to have. And he hand fights with the best of them. And his initial rush and counter to get off blocks in the backfield is good as well. So he's a guy that I would not be upset about. Next one on the list here, and this is where we're really kind of getting into fourth. We're getting into fourth round range here, maybe fifth potentially, depending on what teams see in the eye that they're beholding. JJ Pegas is out of Ole Miss. He reminds me a lot of Colin Saunders. He has similar straight line acceleration. He can be a little bit stiff when moving down the line laterally. Saunders was better at that, but he's kind of in that realm. And Pegas is capable of changing directions, but it's not 100% fluid like it would have been for Colin. But I felt like he disengaged from blocks well. Thought he finds the football and goes and attacks the football. Really liked his spin move, and I thought he had a good swim and rip to go along with it. And let's see. Next one I end up going to here, because I'm jumping around a little bit. That's going to be, let's go with Peebles from Virginia Tech. Aeneas Peebles from Virginia Tech. Peebles has a really good spin move that guards can't react to in quick enough time. He's aggressive to get up the field style, I think fits at one tech. He has the strength to shoot the gap. He has a good rip and swim. He can bull rush at times, but it's the combination of his quickness with getting a blocker to bounce off balance and guessing. That's where his strength really is. So he kind of puts offensive linemen on skates from time to time. He closes quickly on screens, and when he can shoot the gap in the backfield, he disrupts it very well. I thought he occasionally would struggle whenever he'd have to lock out and read and react to the ball carrier at times. He's more of just an attacking style versus I'm going to analyze this, then go. His size takes him, I think it takes him out of the Chiefs' run defense right now. I think he'd be more of a pass rusher. But I mean, he has the ability athletically to get two gaps over without a problem. So I think right there you're getting more of a project. I think with each guy I talk about from here forward, you're getting them. They're going to have one strength, whether it's them against the run or them against the pass, but it's not well-rounded, which is why we're talking about them in the 4th, 5th round range. Matt, the floor is yours.
Yeah, and the guy that I think is to me most curious in that group that you talked about is Shamar Turner, because there's a wide range of outcomes and I think like a wide range of opinions on him, and it's also evolved over time. I mean, people talked about him a year ago as like maybe a top 10 type candidate. And it really, it seems like this season took a step backwards to a point where, yeah, there was a lot of focus on him at his pro day because he didn't test at the combine. He did go to the Shrine Bowl, but it seems like I think teams want to figure out, what is he? Is he the guy that everybody loved a year ago, or now that there's a little bit more questions on? And even now, it seems like there's still kind of a wide range of outcomes on whether he's, could go as early as the first, or maybe he's more of a second, third, or fourth guy. But this gets into, to me, Nick, a really good example that when you're looking, and this is a good learning to me example about just how prospects are, they're not all consensus viewpoints on players. Yes, there are, like we talked about, maybe 15 guys that everybody says first round talent. There might be another 15 guys that everybody says second round talent. After that, you really start getting into the fine lines between players who a team might say, hey, here's a third round player that, could very well be available. It might be the best player on your board, though, at the end of the first round. But another team might say, not even on our board because we just don't like the skill set or doesn't fit with us or anything, pick any of 100 reasons why teams might not like a player. I don't know. Turner just seems to me like a really good example of that, why there might be a wide range of opinions from different NFL organizations on a player and why it's hard to project where he could go. He could go in the second round and I wouldn't be surprised. He could go in the 4th, the 5th round and I wouldn't be surprised.
So now we begin with more defensive tackles from the 5th, probably 6th round, maybe 7th. I don't know. But next one on the list I'm going to put up here is going to be Elijah Simmons out of Tennessee. Simmons is a run-stuffing nose tackle. He's got a solid bull rush, some lateral quickness, and acceleration for size. He's there to stop the run and collapse the pocket. That's his job. That's what he's there. He's going to check that off the list and then chew some gum afterwards. He can take on the doubles and walk back a guard one-on-one. Tennessee rotated him in on rundowns, and he commanded blockers when he was fresh and locked in. They knew they had to account for him. When he got tired, they're like, all right, Steve, you can take 5. Or whoever was blocking at that time. Next one I'm going to throw in here is going to be Vernon Broughton from Texas. Broughton has good size. He can hold up against the line of scrimmage. Where he's at his best is shooting the gap with acceleration and ability to make himself slim to squeeze by a blocker. He could be a 3 tech that works in while he develops. I thought he had good arm length. Where Broughton really needs to learn is how to be able to shed blocks quicker to be able to make a play and survive in the NFL. That's going to be something that will be interesting on that front. Next one is a guy that I like, Ty Hamilton from Ohio State. Hamilton wins on power and effort. He's got a strong bull rush and powerful lower body to drive to go with it. Hamilton gets his strike quick into a blocker and establishes himself and starts trying to work behind the line of scrimmage. He isn't necessarily creative with the combinations of his pass rushes right now, He can get there with a better D-line coach. But his bull rush right now, it's the bull rush, lock him out, and then slip by the block. So those are kind of the parties he's got that he brings to the table, tool belt wise. He doesn't necessarily have the fluidity laterally that some of the other guys higher above him are going to. So doing looping 2 or 3 gaps over, I think, is going to be a struggle for him. But he has a quick impact early on if that's what you're kind of angling for, depending where you put him out on the line of scrimmage. And then I believe I got 2 more left. I don't think I'm missing anybody, but I got 2 more left, and then that's kind of that for me on this front, and guys that I was a fan of. Let's see. Next one on list, I'm going to go with Ryan Mills from Notre Dame. Mills is the king of games. He's the follow most of the time, and he tries them to give himself a clear shot at the quarterback. So somebody sets it up, he's going to follow, boom, he's going to make a play because of his quick acceleration he's got. He's able to lock out on defensive linemen, read the backfield, fight through doubles, and then make the tackle. He lacks elite acceleration, so that may be confusing when you're like, well, but you said he's pretty good. You're right, but he isn't top end, otherwise he'd be higher. But here's the difference. He comes in under control. We said one of the defense tackles earlier doesn't come under control. He actually does to be able to make the play. So he slows down to make sure he's there to make the play, even though he's not winning in 1.5 seconds like Chris Jones could at times, type of thing. He wins on effort and relentlessness. He would be a quality rotational guy, and I think his bull rush and I think if he can improve his bull rush and get a really good forklift, I think he could cause interior offensive lineman a lot more headaches than what he does. And he does have a knack for shooting the gap and catching a guard sleeping. And if he's able to improve those 2 previous things I talked about, they're going to be knocked on their keister. So that is something that if he can add, I think is going to be very promising for him. Final guy I'll use here, this would be a 1 tech. Is going to be Cam Jackson out of Florida. He's got great size. It would pair well with Chris Jones at the 1 tech spot. He's got long arms, which allows him to lock out very easily. He's got a solid punch, good bull rush to go with it. He loves to read the backfield and make the play. He will hustle down the line of scrimmage. He's going to win with power and a swim move, but he needs a D-line coach to build up everything else pass rushing wise. That's going to be the thing. He lacks some fluidity in his hips, especially if he tries to do a loop, but the man's 6'6", 342, so that's to be expected. So that's just kind of being critical of something that, shouldn't, that's just reality of who he is. So the fact he's able to do what he does out there is actually impressive in itself. So for the most part, that is pretty much, those are the guys that I watch that I think are going to get drafted. I think fit the Chiefs for the most part. People may ask about Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant. I think they're going to be long gone. I don't think you have to worry about that front. Matt.
That was going to be my first clarification, because I knew people were going to ask about it. Like, where are they? Yeah, you were expecting them not to be available at 31, and probably, honestly, not even available to where the Chiefs might be able to be in trade range either. So that would answer the question. But I suppose, hey, if they are available at 31, or if you find them available at 24, maybe you're interested in trying to make a deal. Are they good enough for that?
I do not have stars by them. If I have stars by them, the level of stars in my star system tell me where I would place the investment. For me, the party begins when Walter Nolan joins. When Walter Nolan's in range, that's when the party begins.
All right. But if one of those guys fell to 31,
don't start till Walter Nolan rolls in.
But if one of those guys magically fell to 31, you'd be interested.
Who?
And the Michigan guys, and Grant and Graham.
Personally, not really.
Okay.
But, I mean, if the Chiefs do it, the Chiefs do it. And it's happened before in my board, and it'll happen again.
And aside from, I guess, maybe Darius Alexander and the Riley kid from Notre Dame, is there any reason taking a defensive tackle who's not in the Big Ten or the SEC? I'm asking mostly facetiously.
I was trying to remember who else.
Except for those two guys, it seems like they're all Big Ten or SEC.
Yeah, actually, you mentioned it. Touché, sir.
But that's, I think, the modern college football world. I mean, first of all, those are big, fast, strong conferences. So you got to be that level to play. So I think that probably
we had one ACC with Virginia Tech.
Oh, there you go. There you go. Way to go. Way to sneak in there, Vautech. Obviously, Ty Robinson won me over our interview. I think that'd be a great selection. Wouldn't necessarily be the only player I'd consider if you're the Chiefs, because it seems like there's a lot of great guys that would fit. All right, let's go over to probably the more household names, because the defensive tackles, they're the meat and potatoes. I guess they're the potatoes. Defensive ends the meat, because that's the one everybody talks about. They're the sirloin steaks. They're the prime ribs. How do you like that analogy, Nick?
Yeah, I'm good with it.
We're going to leave it in the edit. All right, let's go. Let's dive into it.
Yeah, so obviously I'll mention Abdul Carter. I'll mention Michael Williams. I'll mention Mike Green and Shamar Stewart. But I think most of them are going to be gone, and a couple of them might be more 34 outside linebackers. So I'm not 100% sure if they're going to be a part of that. Where things start to get into range for the Chiefs is going to potentially be James Pierce, the junior, the defensive end out of Tennessee. He's potentially starting to drop. And so what I'll say, for me personally, Pierce has the size. I think the Chiefs would like a defensive end. He just needs to bulk up so that he can combine the natural speed he has with the power. I love Pierce's stutter step to set up tackles, but he can get, at times he can blow right by them because of it. And so he needs to throttle back at times to find the perfect balance on that. He can change directions effortlessly and chase down the ball carrier. He needs to get better at disengaging from blocks. And I thought he was a high energy guy that could loop around and maintain his lateral quickness and acceleration. He comes in a little hot on rushes and will miss the quarterback at times and ball carrier. So that, again, that goes back to the throttle down. Next one is going to be Nick Scorton. I believe I said his last name right. Probably didn't. But if I didn't, then somebody will let me know in the comment section. From Texas A&M. He's probably going to be there on most of your mock draft simulators when you have him. But Nick has the size that fits into Steve Spagnuolo's scheme. I liked his long arms that allow him to extend and lock out on defenders. Thought he read the backfield well and runs and able to shuck the offensive lineman. Scorton has a really good spin move he's able to set up defenders with. He's got good straight line acceleration. I thought he was able to change directions, but had just a little hitch in his hips that isn't going to make it 100% all the time perfect. He was a stand-up rusher half the time, and I thought his best rushes looked like they were more out of a wide 9 angle. So the Chiefs will have to kind of decide if they feel like, from an athletic profile perspective, if he fits them or if he's more of a wide 9 factor. Next person on the list I got is Jack Sawyer out of Ohio State. Jack Sawyer is a high-energy pass rusher. He comes in at 100 miles per hour with his acceleration. I thought he was a quick hand fighter, had a powerful punch. He sets up the edge with authority. He can run down the line laterally to maintain with the ball carrier. He's got good games to where he can get 2 gaps over quickly, and I think he could loop if he needed to and be able to do all that. He had the massive play in the college football playoff game where he had the strip sack, picked up the football, and ran it back to close out that game against Texas and kind of put the dagger in that one. So that was another one. Matt, I think that's our first 3.
And I mean, intriguing guys. I mean, and Sawyer probably just because I saw him so much in the college football playoff and thought he played pretty well, jumps out there. Pierce, they're like the NFL mock draft database right now has 6 defensive ends projected edge players to go in the first round, and Pierce would be the last of the 6. So certainly, if you're the Chiefs at 31, would be in the ballpark. It's a question of whether or not even he would be there, or you get the Nick Scourton from Texas A&M might be the first one. But I mean, they sound like intriguing players, Nick. I mean, the Chiefs they need they need help at edge rusher. I mean, you look at George Karlaftis. I mean, that's your primary consistent outside edge pass rusher. I mean, after that, arguably your best edge rusher is still Chris Jones, but you don't really. I mean, Charles Omenihu's your next guy, and yes, I mean, I like Omenihu, but the Chiefs need some depth. They need some explosion, and I mean, all three of these guys seem like that they would be interesting fits for the Chiefs.
Yes, and as we roll on to defensive ends, the next one on our list is also from Ohio State, and that is JT Tuimoloau. Wow. I hope I said that right. So JT has really good straight line acceleration. He can knife down in a gap or off the edge and blow up a run. He thought he had really good quick ability to process in the backfield. Thought he was able to force the choice in a read option and tackle the ball carrier. He also, I thought, had good feel to shuffle down and blow up the poles. Whenever a guard would come out and try to pull, or somebody tried to come out there and kick him out, and he'd blow that up. Thought he had really good fundamentals on that front. He has a good punch against tackles and a combination of rushes that I think keep the tackles honest and can't allow him to be predictable to where they get used to him in a certain rhythm. Thought he had a good dip around the corner move if needed, and I thought he deciphers screen passes really well, and he can blow up plays, if not intercept them, just with his arm. So the question that comes in right there, though, is he had two really good defensive tackles and another defensive end by him. So you kind of have to weigh if part of it, if he goes into your scheme, depending who you are as an organization, is he going to be a standout guy, or is he going to be a complementary piece? And the reason I say that is because the Chiefs dealt with that whenever they had Ryan Sims, but Julius Peppers was right by him. And then Ryan Sims never made the plays that he did on tape because he didn't have Julius Peppers beside him. So that's something, and Ohio State has four guys that I have mentioned that are along their defensive line. So that's a question NFL teams are going to have to kind of decipher and decide on their own on that front. Next one for me, and this is one of my favorites, is going to be Jordan Burch from Oregon. Burch is a sneaky good pass rusher. He can stand up as a rusher or rush out of a three-point stance. I thought he's a little bit better out of a three-point stance personally. Burch has a serious bull rush and pop to go with it. He's got some powerful hands that stun tackles and rock them back. Burch is a really good bull rusher, and he's got the speed to get around the corner, great acceleration on the close. Burch has sneaky good change of direction for the size that he is as a human being. He shouldn't move as well as he does for his size. That I want to emphasize that, but he does. So that's why he's going to be a rarity, I think, more so than if he's with the right scheme system, all that type of stuff. He is the ideal defensive end that the Chiefs need and have needed, and he can also kick inside on pass rushing downs if they needed to. So I feel like he's got a lot of ceiling to tap into with somebody like Joe Cullen, and if they can work on some of the counters, run defense, then I think there's a ton of promise there. Matt.
Yeah, when you started talking about Sawyer and Tuimoloau, and I'm glad you went to that Julius Peppers comparison, because the really funny thing is that, once again, these two guys, I mean, they get paired a lot in some mock drafts. I mean, as far as like being next to each other, and like who is the better player. I will say the one thing that jumps out to me, and once again, yes, it can obviously vary. Maybe it's because some guys are freeing him up and everything. But like last season, Tuimoloau had more sacks. He had 12.5 sacks. I think Sawyer had 7. But I think it was also Tuimoloau had 22 tackles for loss, and Sawyer had 9. I mean, those are pretty, especially the tackles for loss are just such a discrepancy that it makes me think, okay, maybe Tuimoloau's better. Sawyer made a lot of big plays, but man, they are interesting players, but it does raise the question that you mentioned, which is that, are all these guys along the Ohio State line, are they just good players, but collectively much better than they are because they're all playing together? will they at the NFL? Will they struggle because they don't have guys as good as them playing alongside them always? I mean, it's a risk, but Tuimolotu really stands out because his numbers pop off the page.
Mm-hmm. All right, Matt, you ready to continue?
Let's go.
All right. Next one's going to be from Old Miss, Princely Umanmielen. Umanmielen. That's what it is. Pronunciation key. Princely has the size the Chiefs want in their defensive end. He's got long arms that can keep the offensive tackle from being able to get a punch on him. He has a habit of trying to beat the tackle with speed around the corner, but doesn't necessarily always need to do it that way. He can set it up a little bit differently at times if he wants to. He's got good acceleration, but not top end. And I think he's going to need to increase his strength in the pros to be able to set the edge and be able to run through tackles with power and be able to bull rush at a level that kind of can change things up versus having to use speed. But right now, he's got a rip, spin, and swim that he can utilize to be able to effectively rush the passer. This one's gonna take a minute. So let's. I'm gonna butcher it, and I apologize to him. But such is life. Because I used to say it really well, and I haven't seen his name in a while, so I'm gonna have to. He's out of UCLA. Femi Oldejo. I'm gonna apologize in advance. I'll make sure I look it up before we talk about him down the road even more. He is primarily a stand-up rusher in UCLA. He was previously a linebacker that they started using as a pass rusher. But reason he's able to be used as a pass rusher is because he's got long arms, good acceleration to go with it. Femi has a strong rip move and a good bull rush. He can close quickly. I thought he bended well around the corner. And he is just tapping into who he can be as an edge rusher after going from linebacker to defensive end. He's still learning how to decipher in the run game from the new spot that he's at. But part of the reason they moved him is because he was playing so far off the line that it didn't take advantage of his athletic ability and gave as quick of an impact as it was able to. Next one for me is going to be Ashton Gillette from Louisville. He worked with his hands in the dirt, but he also was in a 2-point stance at times. He's a good power rusher. He's able to circle back on pass rushes quickly, so he can take them wide and kind of cut back in and get back to the quarterback and get even with him. Thought he had good acceleration on the perimeter. I thought his quickness and lateral ability to shoot the inside shoulder at the tackle on guard was good. I thought he's a quality power rusher. He just needs a little bit of help in terms of his hand usage, hand fighting, and kind of how to bull rush better to win. And I thought he was good against the run. Matt, floor is yours.
Anytime you start talking about, especially guys on the edge that have changed positions or they've moved between edge and linebacker, I start getting twitchy because you're talking about tweeners. And I, at the risk of having this clip end up on freezing cold takes one day, tweeners scare me to death, Nick. So anybody that you start talking about, especially on the edge, it's either, hey, is he undersized and therefore was he better suited as a linebacker, or is he too big? And I just get super, super nervous because tweeners just, and sometimes even the really athletic guys that seem like they should stand out, if they don't have bend, that's the one thing that the Chiefs absolutely love. And so it's always tough for tweeners to me, especially guys that go back and forth between those positions, because if it just scares me, Nick, it just scares me.
Oh yeah, what else scares you? Let's talk about it.
I mean, tweeners, snakes, very large spiders. That's a lot of it right there.
Okay. So from a pronunciation key perspective, just so people don't bother me in the comment section, if they've already typed, then they've already typed. Femi from UCLA is pronounced Oladejo. So Femi Oladejo. And then for Ashton, it is Gelati. Ashton Gelati, not Gelati. Even though the spelling is similar. So,
and I believe it, as you are correct, I believe it is pronounced Ashton.
So, yes, Ashton spelled normal, so we're good on that front. Thank you. Next one on the list is going to be, I'm not enamored, but Kyle Kennard from South Carolina. He hasn't tapped into who he can be as a pass rusher yet, so that's why I don't really want to knock him. But from a profile perspective, I thought he was lanky with long arms right now. Thought he had good acceleration. Part of it is he has a knack for again rushing past the quarterback and getting back in to strip the football. And so he kind of has a way of maneuvering and angling his body to be able to knock the ball out. And that's not all defensive linemen have that, and he's got that. So Derek Thomas had that to a T and knew exactly where the point was, the aiming point to be able to hit the hand or where the quarterback would always release the football. Derek had that down to a T. That was an art form. But with Kennard, he can also quickly work his way back for the sack if he needs to. If he can't get to the football, I think he's going to have to get into the weight room and bulk up to be able to survive in the league long term. I thought when he pass rushed from a wide 9 angle, I thought that was kind of better for him overall. I don't know if this guy fits, but I love watching his tape, and that's David Walker out of Central Arkansas. I thought Walker had a great bull rush against the competition he went against. He had the acceleration that would show up consistently on tape. It didn't have trends where it went up and down. I thought it was consistent. I thought he had a strong punch. His height typically doesn't fit the scheme, and his arm length doesn't necessarily. It doesn't normally shine in the scheme, the lack of arm length that he'd have that Chiefs normally use. But I expect Walker to end up at as a 34 outside linebacker for somebody. But I would not be upset if the Chiefs didn't have him as a pass rushing specialist, if that makes sense. For me, next person on the list is going to be Elijah Roberts out of SMU. And the guys we're talking about now, I kind of see as more 4th, 5th round range, just to kind of give people bearings on this front. Roberts out of SMU, he can put his hand in the dirt, but he can also be a stand-up rusher if he needs to. I thought he had a good punch and a good bull rush. He can laterally shuffle down the line, and I thought he had good straight line closing speed. I think he's built on power and will personally. And because of that, I think it allows his bull rush, his club, and his rip move to be good. And like I said, the way he shuffles down the line to blow up a block is something that deserves to be noted. But I thought his change of direction could be a little bit stiff at times. Matt, I think that's 3.
There you go. And you have to just annoy me by bringing up David Walker, because I once again, 6 foot screams out tweener, but he is 263, so he's a big guy, but just produced all the heck. And Buck Buchanan winner, which, as you know, goes to the Defensive Player of the Year at the Division II level. He's an amazing looking player. I love everything about him, his athleticism, everything about him. It's just like if you could stretch him to 6'3", I would be even more in love. But he might be the guy, especially because I'll tolerate tweeners later in the draft. So, and the Chiefs have 4 7th-round picks. So if they spend a 7th-round pick on a tweener, I would not object at all. And if a guy like David Walker is there, I'd probably jump on that in a heartbeat.
Yeah, I don't think Walker's going to. I would be surprised if Walker's there at that point. If something went horribly wrong, Matt.
Somebody can, and that's, once again, another guy who just seems to jump all over the boards because, once again, at that level, just takes one team to fall in love with him so that they can go really high. And 6 foot, somebody's probably going to see him and correct. And like you said, think that they can probably turn him into an amazing 3-4 edge rusher. That's probably what his best fit is. So he probably should go there. There's some Joshua Uche things going on in the back of my head, Nick, that it's like, hey, you know what? finding a 3-4 linebacker, that wasn't the guy for Steve Spagnuolo and for Joe Cullen, but maybe David Walker is. That at least is thinking I could get behind.
Yeah, I wouldn't get behind it personally, but as we continue on our defensive end series, next guy we're going to talk about is Jared Ivey out of Ole Miss. Ivey has long arms, good size to go with it. I think he could even bulk up and take on some more size to be able to be an even more powerful rusher. He lacked the top end acceleration, and when he's having to process stuff, it slows him down a little bit versus his ability just whenever he just attacks. He's better on that aspect of it. And Ivey can effectively identify and jump up to bat passes. So he has a knack for being able to time that and do that well. He has a hop and a rip that he likes to use, and it seems to kind of work on some tackles when they're trying to re-anchor at times, and he's able to use that on that front. He does have the arms to be able to bull rush and swim effectively. Ivey is also effective at games. He's another guy who has a solid shuffle down the line. He just lacks the edge rushing speed that shows urgency at times. And I think he's going to be more of a supporting cast type rusher versus kind of a featured rusher. And at this part in the draft, that makes sense. A guy that I probably will like more than other people, but I don't know, we'll find out down the road. It's going to be Jay Joyner from Minnesota. Joyner has a size that I think Chiefs like in their edge rusher or can at minimum tolerate. I thought he had really good get off on his acceleration. He can beat the tackle around the corner with the speed that he has. I thought he had long enough arms to be able to keep the tackle at bay from being able to get into him. Joyner has a knack for knocking the ball out of the quarterback's hand once he hits the corner. And he will continue to battle through a block and relentlessly continue to attack until he reaches whoever the ball carrier is. So I didn't see a lot of quit in him. But he will need to bulk up, just like I said with a lot of other guys, to be able to harness more of the speed harness more of the power with the speed that he has. Let's see. Next one on the list, Taylor Barron from Miami. He has the ideal size, arm length, and acceleration that fits the Chiefs scheme. He has really good lateral quickness and acceleration for loops. I think with a couple years in the weight room, he could become a good rotational guy. I know he has a knack for closing on the ball carrier, and I thought he had a good rip swim to the inside shoulder. So Matt, that's another 3. I think we only got 1 or 2 more left, but the floor is yours.
Well, if we got 1 or 2 more left, I want to get to them now because I'm excited.
Well, I doubt you're excited, but all right.
I kind of am. I mean, I know who I'm hoping who the last 1 or 2 are, so I might have a question about a third.
Okay. All right. And the last one, I doubt you're thinking of on your list. So I think you're going to have some questions. It's going to be Antoine Powell-Ryland from Virginia Tech. I thought he's underrated as a pass rusher. I liked his burst off the edge. His inside shoulder moves, I was a fan of. I thought, again, another guy who I feel like understands how to work past the quarterback and get to them. And I liked his smack and rip. So I'm going to double check and scan through here one more time, Matt. But I think for the most part, that is the edge rushers. And we just already talked about the defensive tackles. So for the most part, those are the groups of people I was a big fan of.
We'll see. And I'm probably going to ask you a very unfair question because I might ask you about a guy that you didn't even watch because, I mean, on the mock draft database, he's like number 276, and there's only 257 picks. So very definition of a 7th round pick or an undrafted free agent. But Johnny Walker from Mizzou, I had a chance to watch him a couple of times, and I liked him. I thought I also got to see a couple of press conferences with him, so I thought he was good off the field too. Any thoughts there? Did you get a chance to see any bit of him?
Yeah, I watched him in Missouri games as well throughout the season. Not recently, but just in general.
Sounds like you're not as enamored as the Mizzou homer over here.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's more going to be in that undrafted range, and athletically, I'm not 100% sure if he's kind of a fit for what the Chiefs want overall.
And just to prove that I'm not a complete homer and I can be objective, I mean, and we'll get into this later in our process, but I'm going to be much more hyped up, if the Chiefs were to take Devin Neal from Kansas than if they took Johnny Walker from Mizzou. So,
okay,
I try to be as down the middle as I can. I try to be as objective as I can here, Nick.
Okay. So Matt, what do you feel like the Chiefs need to get in their defensive line after hearing all that? Not necessarily player, but just kind of what you feel like they got to get done.
Yeah, and maybe I'm just taking away too many bits and everything, but I am hearing a lot of guys, but some guys who just may not have the size that you want at that position. And that's going to be maybe a choice for the Chiefs if they do decide to go after this position, especially in the third or fourth round. Not having any fifth or sixth picks, are they going to have to sacrifice size for athleticism and production? Do you favor that over the size, or do you just go size and don't worry what the production or the athleticism looks like? I don't think you can completely do that, but to me, I mean, it's going to be interesting is just in the first round. If you consider going defensive line, it sounds like there's a pretty good chance that you may end up going with the 7th or 8th best edge rusher, whereas you could end up getting the 3rd best defensive tackle. I mean, best available player, which way do you go? Typically, I would say more often than not, you're probably getting a better player and better prospects with the number 3 defensive tackle, especially in this group, Nick, because it seems like at that point you'd be getting a really good player.
Yeah. I do need to say 2 other pronunciations. So earlier I said, I think I got it right, but just in case, from Texas A&M, it's Nick Scorton. Scorton. Yeah. And then I didn't talk about him because to me, he looks like a 34 outside linebacker, but I know he's normally there whenever people are doing mock draft simulators, is going to be Donovan Ezaraku from Boston College. So I think he's going to be more of a 34 outside linebacker. So again, disclaimer wise, for defensive tackles and defensive ends, if I did not name off a person, I do not think they're going to be available in the first round when the Chiefs are there, where they'd even have their first chance at them, or B, I think they're either meant for a 34 front, or I think athletically they will not shine in the Chiefs scheme. So if I did not name them, let me emphasize this right now. Does that mean they cannot play football? Does not mean they do not have a home in the NFL. It just means that I think for the Chiefs, they will not get the maximum return on investment for them that fits what the Chiefs are doing attacking wise. And also, if I did not name somebody, that doesn't mean, hey, what do you think of the person that didn't get named? And would you take them in a later round? No. Like I name the people that I think
they don't fit it.
Like, yeah, if I don't think they fit the scheme, they don't fit the scheme. So that's kind of where I'm at on that front, Matt. So I had to get that disclaimer out there.
Yeah, we probably need to mention that first in the future, just for anybody who doesn't make it all the way to the end.
It's fine. We got a podcast down the road for that.
You know what? I'm going to try to be the first one to comment on this video, and I'm going to put the disclaimer in there, and also just so I can say first.
Yeah. Well, good luck with that.
Well, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that 1 or 2 at minimum of the players that we talked about today are probably going to be Kansas City Chiefs. Because
I hope so.
Chiefs are going to hit this group, and I don't think there's any doubt about that. I mean, it's a target-rich environment for sure, and it's a position of need for the Chiefs.
Yeah, selfishly, I'd like to see him get 2 defensive tackles, a 1 tech and a 3 tech, and then a defensive end. But I think they're going to have to trade down if they want to get 3. I think they would have to make. I think they're going to have to make a decision if they stay at the current draft pick situation they're at. I think they're going to have to decide between 1 defensive tackle and 1 defensive end. But if they can figure out a way to trade down, then I think you get 2 defensive tackles and a defensive end. And if you get even more than that, like you get 2 D ends and 2 D tackles, that's fantastic. But I think then they would have to either release or waive a player depending on where they're at in terms of vested veteran aspect of it from their current roster.
And from a standpoint of having what I'm calling just accounting as 4 picks early and 4 picks in the 7th. I mean, you got your 4 picks in the first 4 rounds, your 4 picks in the 7th. It's 4 and 4.
When did they get 4 in the 7th?
All sorts of. Was it? I'm sorry. It's 1 in the 6th, 3 in the 7th, right?
Maybe. I'm not sure.
Or is it? I think it is. Now you've got me wondering, and if I've got it correct. Oh my goodness, Nick! I don't want to lead people astray.
Well,
I mean, it's happened before, so I don't want to do that again. No. Let's see here. We are going down to the 7th round.
So while Matt's looking that up, from a one tech perspective, you at minimum want a guy who can stuff the run, and then if they can have pass rush on top of that ability, that would help out Chris Jones significantly. And then from a 3-tech perspective, you're going to want somebody that can hold up in a single team against the run, but more than anything else can be right now a rotational guy that can take some snaps away from Chris Jones, but still keep at least a serviceable impact. I'm not even going to try to hold. I'm not even remotely going to try to hold him to a Chris Jones standard because that's ridiculous. Chris Jones is 1 of 1. But if you can get a guy who can be a good pass rusher, I think that helps out and helps out overall in the pass rush, but then also helps out with Chris's ability. And Matt, do you have your draft answer?
So in the case that Nick decides to create a half hour extra for a work for himself, here's a pause. Chiefs have 8 picks in this draft. They have 4 in the first 3 rounds. They have 1 in the 4th round and 3 in the 7th.
So there is no 5th, 6th, right?
Correct. There's no 5th and 6th, which I knew, but I just miscounted in my head. So it's really 5 and 3. So my original point being that if the Chiefs were going to take a defensive end and a defensive tackle, I see, the potentially being 2 of those in the first 5 picks. Those are going to be impact players that you can count on. I certainly think it's possible that the 7th round pick, you're mostly going to be taking guys that, for the most part, are probably some guys that you just don't think that you could sign as undrafted free agents. So, another defensive lineman in the 7th round would not surprise me. You got potentially 3 picks. And like you said, if the Chiefs do make a trade to move around the board, trade down at some point and pick up more picks, they could end up with more in the 7th. They could also get rid of some of those 7th round picks to move up. You never know. Brett Veach once took a couple of 7ths and parlayed them into a 6th. So things can get crazy during the NFL draft. I don't necessarily think the Chiefs are coming out with 8 players, but it still wouldn't surprise me if they did.
Well, you shouldn't see some of my mock draft simulations because you've seen some of them. But...
I've seen some of them. You take every trade that comes along.
Not everyone, but I am a big fan of stocking up for 2025 and 2026.
I think you sent me one where I think you traded back like 8 times and picked up 26 picks in the next 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, no, I'm a big fan of that. Big fan of really stockpiling things. Really give you, room to really explore the room.
That's why you should be in the room with Brett Veach, because you would be the counterweight to his voice of always trading up. You'd be like, nah, let's trade down a little bit and get some more picks for next year.
So what would you call that position? What would you call that position if you had to create a title for it?
Assistant general manager.
No, they've already got guys that have worked hard to be able to
for now.
That doesn't get in the way of what they've done.
How about assistant director of pro personnel?
Again, I think they've already got that. Matt, you're trying to create a brand new title that doesn't exist.
Okay, how about no? These are positions that actually do exist. If it want to be a position...
the title we're trying to come up with doesn't exist right now. The ones you're talking about, yes, and those are people that have worked hard for those roles.
Okay, then pro personnel intern?
I'm sure they have that too, but all right.
But that's at least a starting position. That's at least the entry level position, Nick. Man. Yes, you would have to get some coffee for some people and everything.
Yeah.
And you would definitely be helping out Tim Terry moving the chains on practice field.
Okay. Oh, well,
but every once
Matt,
in a while, your job would be to tell Brett Veach, hey, Brett, trade down.
Yeah, but I feel like you need some analytics to go with it to showcase why that would need to be the case.
I have no doubt you could do it.
Chief Trade Analytics Officer.
Chief Analytics Trading Down Officer.
Well, even no, you don't use the trading down. You use trade, just in general.
just trade in general. Except you would never advise trading up.
Oh,
unless it's for a left tackle like Joe Alt.
There you go. Look at that, Matt.
And then in which case you go into Brett Veach's office and pound the table and want to give up all of this year's picks and next year's picks for Joel.
But based on the mock draft simulations we talked about, I would have already prepped a couple years beforehand.
Exactly. You'd already have
too much arsenal.
23 picks in 2026.
So, all right, Matt, we're going off the rails here on this one.
All right, everybody. There's your defensive ends, defensive tackles for 2025, courtesy of the mind of Nick Jacobs. We have got more coming up for you over the next couple of weeks. And I mean, we are in draft season, less than a month away now. So it's getting serial. So we got a couple more groups to go through. Of course, as always, we will take your questions on Tuesday night for the Chiefs Digest Live Q&A. And if anything else pops up between now and then, you might see us here or there. As always, hit the bell to subscribe. Give us a 5-star review if you can, so you can help other people find the podcast and find us on Chiefs Digest on YouTube. We appreciate you, everybody. Have a great week.
Hey, Matt, do you think on the Q&A we'll get a question that asks, what should the Chiefs do at 31? It's draft season.
You've been listening to 41 is the Mic, presented by KSHB 41, your home of the Chiefs and Chiefs Digest.